when we were looking at the possibility of making a new Age of Empires game, right, an Age of Empires 4, I think the conversations really started when we started releasing the HD versions of the original Age of Empires games. And we saw something that we didn't expect, honestly, which was that the user numbers kept going up and up and up. And every month, more and more and more people were not just buying the game, but they were sticking with it and playing it and continuing to play it. And it gave us a lot of confidence in broaching the idea of creating an Age of Empires 4. And from there, we did a lot of discussions. Myself, I've made a lot of RTS games in the past. So there was a lot of, hey, what should we do with an Age 4? Where would we go with it? What cool features should it have? And that's kind of how we started to build the idea of what Age of Empires 4 should be. And before we even talked to any developers outside of Microsoft, we built up a pitch internally with myself and several other key members of the team here at Microsoft, and pitched it to Phil Spencer and his leadership team and said, hey, we would love to explore the idea of doing a new Age of Empires game. Are you cool with that? And these are the things we want to go after. And yeah, he gave us the thumbs up. And that's what started the ball rolling that we then took and ran with to, it's almost 6 years later. Here we are, I'm about to release the game. It's been quite a ride.
Yeah, and we've been on a journey the last few years, releasing the definitive editions of Age, the original Age, and 2 and 3, and seeing people have their love of Age of Empires reignited, or have people try them for the first time, getting ready for 4. And so Age of Empires turns 25 in 2022, which is really exciting. And all that time, we've had players all over the world playing, meeting friends, finding a love of history through the games, and they've been the lifeblood that's kept the franchise alive for that 24, almost 25 years. So we're really excited to bring them Age of Empires 4. Well, we know that an Age of Empires player doesn't necessarily play all the Age of Empires games. So we spend a lot of time trying to understand our players. We've got lots of teams that work directly with our players, understanding them, what they love about the franchise. And so having our Age of Empires players have a seat at the development table for Age 4 has been really important. So way back in 2017, we formed a council of players, a small group to start with, and we considered making sure that every games community was represented. So we had Age players, Age 2, Age 3, Age of Myth, different play styles, competitive players, campaign players, skirmish players, players from different places all over the world. Initially flew that group out to Vancouver to meet with everybody at Relic. And then over the years, that council has grown. They've been hands-on with the game since the very early days, playing, giving feedback, telling us what they liked, what they didn't like, what felt like Age, what didn't feel like Age. And we've built that feedback into the game. And so they've done everything from pushed us to redesign the UI icons to feel more like the games they know and love. They've influenced in-game systems, a whole ton of things. And so they've really helped shape the game. And so they've very much been part of the development thus far. So we've been very grateful to have them on board with us.
Well, I think one of the major things is that the real-time strategy game genre has evolved so much over the last 25 years since the original Age of Empires came out. And while we wanted to keep the DNA of what makes Age of Empires unique, the emphasis on large city building, the kind of the time to kill, the ability to, have micro but not demand micro at all points in the game, were things that we really wanted to maintain in the game. But there was so much room to innovate and push things, I think, a little bit further. These days when we talk about building civilizations or, factions in any other RTS game, we always are trying to diversify them and make them more unique. And I think one of the really big pushes for us was, how do we make that, even more of a feature for this Age of Empires than we have before? How can we push the civilizations even further apart so that you really do have to switch mindsets wholeheartedly, not just thinking about like data and some of the balance differences like we have in the other Age games, but this one really, like, I have to put in a different brain in order to play each civilization, and that was something we really wanted to make sure that we could push for this one. And then as we talk about cities, right? That's a huge part of Age of Empires is building your city, defending your cities. We thought that bringing, more defensive play into the game and adding walls that you could actually fight on and fight over and have these combats that Siege actually played a big role rather than just in kind of wiping out buildings, but literally like breaking a line. And I think there's a ton of other innovations, the way that our units, now that we use a different kind of pathfinding. Classically, there's this pathfinder that's called A-Star that's been used in RTS games since 25 years ago or more. And that we're using a new system called Flow Field now, and it allows us to really do some cool things with units in terms of how they spread out and how they can block attacks and how the units will move around each other. And it's allowed us to develop some new strategies that we haven't really had in such a visible way in Age of Empires that we can do now and kind of support. But those are just some, aside from also, multiplayer and having incredible, solid back-end multiplayer with anti-cheat systems and all this stuff that, we didn't really think about at all when we were making RTS games, 20, 25 years ago. Those are all things that we really wanted to make sure we nailed and provided an amazing experience no matter how people wanted to play Age of Empires.
As you mentioned, combat on walls, stealth forests, we've got a mastery system, we've got the campaign documentary videos. There's so much that's going in. All in what players expect in 2021 with 4K graphics, and it's just going to be a really, really great experience.
Honestly, it was a lot of discussion. There are so many fans from every single Age of Empires game that are so passionate about their specific game that they love and how it plays, that every feature was scrutinized under, do we want to bring something from Age 1? What about Age 2? Oh, Age 3 did things differently. Do we want to, tap into that? Where do we go? Do we pick up from Age 3 and go forward? And we looked a lot at, the player bases of each game, like how many people were engaging with the titles, like what they were loving about those titles. We did tons of studies, not just with user research, but also with our community council to try to really get at the heart of what was the things that they really, really cared about. What makes Age of Empires Age of Empires? And it was, like I said, it was challenging. I mean, to this day, I always think like, oh, should we have taken this mechanic from one of the other Age games than the one we did? But I really kind of like the blend that we've gotten. We knew we didn't want to go to the card system that Age 3 had. We felt that was, it's great for that game, but we felt that was a little too much for what we wanted to do with 4. But aside from that, I think we have a nice blend of, elements from 3, like, all of our, when you age up now and you get to pick a landmark that's directly out of kind of Age 3 and Myth and how you would choose to age up. Wall combat is completely new to, but that leans more towards an Age 3 kind of scenario. But we have a lot of Age 2 in there too, with a lot of the classic buildings and the structures, because we really wanted to provide this nice play space that people from every game could find something that they really enjoyed about the game. And hopefully, even though they might love Age 3 and they might play Age 4 as well, and that's kind of the way that we wanted to do it, to make sure not just to our fans, but to ourselves, that we could prove that we could make a great Age of Empires game.
Yeah, absolutely. And some things that will maybe look familiar at first will feel different. The show match that we've put out, our commentators pointed out, well, Age 2 players are going to come across Boar in Age 4, but the experience is going to be a little different.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Boar are pretty ruthless in Age 4 now. It's funny to watch a lot of the 2 players get taken by surprise when they try to kill one of those and kill it with their villagers.
Absolutely.
It doesn't go well for the villagers.
No. But villagers can fight back, but still. Yeah. So there'll be things that are familiar, but there's just a little bit of an Age 4 spin on them. So really excited to start getting feedback on those things and see how people mesh with them.
Well, I think first, the important thing to note is that I wouldn't say our civilizations are completely asymmetrical. That's something that a game like StarCraft would have, for example. And you can see how even 3 civilizations that are completely asymmetrical take an incredible amount of time to try to get right and to balance. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to start opening up, though, from the more symmetrical style that Age of Empires has done in the past. And so to do that, we're doing what we would call semi-asymmetrical civilizations. And that means that there are some things that are core to the game that will never change. Like you will always have a pikeman type unit, a cavalry type unit, and an archer type unit in any civilization you play in Age of Empires 4. And we wanted to use that as kind of a cornerstone and then build off of that, right? Like you would always have a blacksmith. The blacksmith might have different things it can do besides doing upgrades, but having these kind of key things that people could always understand was super important to us. But what we realized, though, and I think this came a lot from not just other RTS games that myself and Relic has developed in the past, but also from, a Killer Instinct, which is a game that I worked on for years before going to Age of Empires. And we really tried to push the bounds of what we could do within a certain mechanical system in order to create all these unique fighters. And I think we've adopted a lot of that learning in terms of how we approach the things that we no longer consider sacred in Age of Empires 4 in terms of what we could do with a civilization. Right? The idea of moving buildings is pretty radical for Age of Empires 4. It's been done in other RTS games, but to give an entire civ in Age 4 the ability to move everything, including their landmarks, is kind of crazy, and it's very new to Age. And so, having these new boundaries that we could explore and it was funny because the relationship with Relic was always, we'd be like, hey, you can be a little crazier. Like, what if this? And they'd be like, no, that's too crazy. Or, they would come up with something crazy and we'd push back. So it was this wonderful back and forth relationship as we tried to work out, what we really should touch and what we shouldn't. But, even the way that we shift the priorities of resources, that certain civs want certain resources earlier than others, and some really don't even need some of the resources, is a super huge change when you think about it in terms of how Age of Empires has played in the past. And all of those things, I think, were fair game as we started to explore what we were going to do with the civilizations and how we could make them semi-symmetrical or semi-asymmetrical in a way that would allow us a tremendous amount of play, but still keep those core relationships intact so people had somewhere to start from.
Yeah, and some will feel more familiar. When I started playing, when I joined the team, would play as the English.
Yep, play the English.
A little bit of bias on my part, but also because they felt more comfortable, and then I would move on, and now I really love playing as the Chinese with the tax collector and being able to do both landmarks and the dynasties. And so it's as you're playing Age 4, you could start with something that feels a bit more familiar, or you could just dive right in as the Mongols and move your civ around the map. So I'm going to be interested to see which civs people really sort of dig into, which they really resonate with. And we'll be working on balance post-launch as well. That's always going to be something that we're looking at.
For a long, long time.
I'm a campaign player. I really love the campaigns in Age 4. I think they bring history to life in a way that I've just never seen in a game. They cover longer periods of history than in the previous games, and they're not focused on a single figure. They'll highlight people. For instance, Joan of Arc turns up in a 100 Years' War campaign, but the campaign is not solely about Joan and her journey. It's about the whole of the conflict and all the events within that. As you've seen in previous ways that we've shown the game, we have these amazing documentary style videos that will set up each mission of the campaign, tell you the story, set the context, which period are you coming into, what's been happening, who's at conflict, who are the major players, what are you fighting over, set that up, you play the mission, and then it drives you forward. And so there's so much content there for people to discover, and I think people are going to learn a lot from the game. I certainly have, about periods of history I thought I knew the story of, and they're just really, really compelling stories brought to life, and I'm really excited for people to get hands-on with them.
I am just really happy that it worked. From one of the original, actually the very first pitch deck that I put together years ago to create this, I've always been a big fan of Ken Burns, who does documentary features. He did an incredible one on the Civil War and on jazz and baseball. And his approach to how he narrates and turns documentaries into stories was something I always absolutely loved. And on the same hand, we also have shows like Top Gear and Neil deGrasse Tyson doing Cosmos, rebooting Cosmos, that really try to take subjects that some people consider really esoteric or really kind of like, that I can't understand that. I don't know anything about cars, like very niche, and really make them appealing to a mass market and a broad range of people. And that was something I was really like, literally in the first deck was pictures of Top Gear and Neil deGrasse Tyson with Cosmos, and be like, how do we do that with history? How can we create this incredible feeling of place and of time and connecting, and what I call humanizing history, right? Which, is a crazy term, but the idea of being able to connect past and present in a way that people today can relate to the events that happened in the past. And all of this has been kind of driven towards that goal. And yeah, I couldn't be happier with the results. It's definitely unique and very different, but it's been wonderful to see the teams kind of run with it and it take on its life of its own from that very first concept, years and years ago.
And our narrator Victoria being sort of the
storytelling
voice. She's got an amazing voice. I would listen to her tell me a story to put me to sleep. Like, it's so soothing but powerful. She's great, and she's the consistent voice that's going to take you through all these stories. And I think spending longer with each period of history and delving in that little bit deeper makes me think more about the people that are involved. And these are real people with real lives. And yes, they're going to battle, but you think about the towns you built and where they've come from. And I just think it really makes me connect with the history a lot. Ooh, sorry.
When the game launches, we will have multiplayer up and running. We have a quick match system that allows you to play with ELO rank. You will have an ELO rank generated for you when you start playing, and it will match you up against people that share the same ranking. You'll be able to check out that ranking at ageofempires.com, so you can check out where you fall in the leaderboards, keep track of your progress against other people. Our last beta test that we did, our closed beta test, we were actually running that system behind the scenes, and we forgot to tell everybody that we were. But like, everyone's been being rated since they first started playing. So the multiplayer experience, I mean, obviously this is Age of Empires, so you can play everything up to 8 players in any configuration you would want, either 7v1 all the way to 4v4, 1v1, v1, v1, v1 all the way to 8 teams if you really want to. You can do anything you really could in previous Age of Empires games up to 8 players. Aside from that, once we get through the launch, we want to let the balance settle a little bit. And so our major update that we're planning for spring of 2022 is going to be when seasons come on for multiplayer. And seasons will allow us to do seasonal resets, have balance patches, unique challenges, and in-game ways that you can track progress and play not just 1v1, but in other configurations as well and be match made and compete. So we're really looking forward to kind of seeing seeing what players love about the multiplayer system. But this being, the start of the conversation with Age of Empires 4 at launch, we're going to be looking to our fans too to see what they really want us to add or bring or change or develop in terms of how they would love the multiplayer to grow. And that includes not just, the game itself, but the modes. Are there, some mods that maybe we could add that would be really cool, tweaks to the game, but also, just like, are there things that they really want that we can do, and what's on our roadmap and what they would love to add. So it's going to be a great back and forth conversation with everyone to figure out what's the right thing to do in what order for multiplayer.
There you go. Adam, you took my thing about feedback. We're building the game for you, and so we're going to be listening intently to what you want to see, where you'd like tweaks, and we'll be working with the game team on that. And a little fun fact, that the council that I mentioned earlier that we started in 2017, they've actually played a couple of multiplayer tournaments when we've given the game to them just to try it out. And as you'll know, in our closed beta, in our tech stress test, we always include multiplayer. That's our moment to really test everything on the back end and make sure that everything runs smoothly, and really get that test going so that on day one we're ready for you to ready up. While this video is going live during Red Bull Wololo 5, which is the biggest Age 2 tournament to date. Wish we could be there in Heidelberg with you if the world was a little bit more open, but really excited to see that. And as we said previously, we're going to be evolving the game with the players. And so hearing from our competitive players is really important. We had a lot of faces that you may be familiar with joining us with our council to give us feedback as we go. We also have a tournaments producer on the staff who some of you may be familiar with. He's everybody's favorite hippo, but haven't heard from him, but we think he's hanging out in a castle pretending to be a jester at the moment, maybe. But he's on team with us, and he's going to be working with tournament organizers to really make sure that they have support from us for supported events, that we can continue to promote the scene that's really, really great, and be doing that feedback gathering as well.
Well, I think one of the first things I learned is how polite the Age of Empires 4 beta community is. One thing that I always love is when people that have issues with games or love things about games can speak about them in a constructive manner. It doesn't matter if it's criticism or if it's praise. The ability to actually express yourself in a way that we can understand what it is you love or don't like or don't love about a game is absolutely critical for us to be able to understand what you actually want out of things. Sometimes people have a difficulty communicating what they actually want. They'll talk about a symptom rather than a disease, so to speak. And the thing that really impressed me was how eloquent everybody on the forums was from feedback. We got a tremendous amount of excellently written feedback, both in positive and in things that they thought, in negative ways, that they thought that this could be better. And I really, really appreciated that. Like, I think everybody did. It just makes our lives so much easier when we're trying to decipher what people actually want versus what they might say. Because, sometimes you get emotional about something and you'll write something that doesn't actually mean what you're thinking. And we have to play this game of deciphering to try to figure out what people are actually after. And so that was the biggest thing that I loved, was just seeing how eloquent everybody was. But for the learnings themselves, my gosh, well, everybody that really loves their Age of Empires game really wants Age 4 to be like the game that they love. And so we got a lot of fun commentary from a whole bunch of different people on, oh, but, I love this in Age 3. Why isn't it this way in Age 3? Why did you do this? Or, why isn't it more like Age 2 in this way? And that was great learnings. The people are still so passionate about this franchise. And it really just sets a good check mark for us that we really need to make sure that we support and listen to all these different voices in terms of coming at Age 4 from all the different age games and what they really expect out of it. But I think our community team has done a wonderful job combing through a huge amount of feedback, not just from our poll at the end, but from all of the forum chat and everything that went on, of people with all of the commentary they had on every single different aspect of the game. I mean, it ran the gamut from everything from, this specific sound effect on these units and this language in this era to, oh, I want to see more. And one of the things that to know about real-time strategy game development is everyone will always ask for more zoom. No matter what you do in an RTS game, everyone will ask for you to be able to zoom out more. And so that was something that we knew probably going into it that we were going to get feedback on. Of course, we did. And we've already made adjustments to that. So the technical tests that we're going to be running now will all have a 20% bigger view space for people. So another fifth of a screen of view. We feel that enables you a lot more vision and a lot more ways to read the battlefield, but it doesn't get away from kind of the intimacy of combat that we've designed Age 4 around. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, like I said, the fans have been wonderful, and it's been I love having these kind of tests and be able to interact with people one-on-one.
And as someone who looks after the teams that gather that feedback, close beta, we had literally thousands of forum threads and we read them all. But I really love how quickly the game team's been acting on feedback. We went out with videos at fan preview in April, and you told us that you didn't think the weapon scaling was right. So by the time we showed you the game again in June, we'd made changes. And so the game team have been really hungry to get that feedback as we've handed it over, and to go through it all, have discussions about what we're going to change. And so we're still working on some things that are going to, be there from day one, and that's going to continue. And so when the game launches on October 28th, we want to hear what you think. Let us know, and we'll be listening.